Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of You're Wrong, and I'm Always Right. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Bioneer, who has the distinguished title of being the only fitness influencer stupid enough to think steroids don't work. And you might think I'm joking, but no, this genius literally just uploaded a video titled, "Steroids Are Not Functional, They're Lame," in which he explained he believes steroids do not enhance sports performance. Now, obviously he's wrong, and obviously I'm going to explain why he's wrong. Now, his video is over 18 minutes long. I'm not going to go through his entire video, and he tends to make the same point over and over and over again. So I'm just going to take snippets out of his video that I think are the most important, and I'm going to explain in detail why everything he said is just irretrievably stupid, and I can find kindergartners, perhaps even hamsters, that are smarter than him.
Obviously think you have the right to do whatever you want with your body, but I think by, being a bit relaxed and trying to be fair, you actually end up downplaying just how silly and lame steroids really are, and in particular how they actually don't enhance your performance at all, quite the opposite.
So I'm sure some of you thought I was joking, but no. The Bioneer is so delusional, he thinks taking steroids reduces sports performance. If only this guy was Lance Armstrong's coach during his cycling career, he could have told Lance, "No, Lance, don't take the steroids. You're going to be a worse cyclist." Imagine how much faster, how much more races Lance Armstrong could have won if the Bioneer was Lance Armstrong's coach and he could have told Lance to put down the needle. Imagine how much better of a cyclist Lance could have been, and he wouldn't have had to deal with the shame of going on Oprah Winfrey admitting he cheated his entire career. This is just so ridiculous. It is so irretrievably stupid. This is the equivalent of taking a math test and writing fart as the answer and thinking you got the question right.
So I'm going to use the language now that I often use with my daughter, which is to say that, using steroids doesn't make you a stupid person, but you are being stupid if you use them.
Oh, right, like you're one to talk. Again, this is the same guy who thinks Lance Armstrong would have been a better cyclist if he didn't take steroids. I bet if your daughter was struggling in school and there was a steroid that existed that made your brain work better and raised your IQ, you'd tell her, "Oh, no, don't take the smart, brain-enhancing steroids. They actually make you dumber." I have no idea why all the kids in your class that are smarter than you and doing better in school who are taking the IQ-boosting steroids, I don't know why they're smarter than you. Maybe you're just really retarded, but if you ever get confused with any of these math questions, just write down fart. That always worked for me.
So for starters, steroid use is going to impair your mobility, make you more likely to injure your tendons, and cause stiffness and awkward movement. You might think that sounds a little bit hyperbolic, having seen, I'm sure, some very high-performing steroid users, on the internet, but they are the exception, and also they're working against the steroids. They're in that way in spite of the steroids, not because of them.
Now, it will come as no surprise to most of you that what the Bioneer just said is horseshit. Here is one of the best weightlifters to have ever lived, Ilya Ilyin, who got popped for using steroids, so we know he's not natural. He was taking steroids when he did this. Here he is breaking the clean and jerk world record for his weight class at 246 kilograms. Does he look like he has impaired mobility? Does he look stiff? No, it looks like he has pretty excellent mobility. I think most people in the world don't have the mobility he has, yet he is taking steroids. Here's Juji Mufu, doing the splits on a set of chairs while lifting a weight above his head, and we all know Juji Mufu takes steroids. Does he look stiff? Does he look like he lacks mobility? Well, Bioneer, you don't take steroids, right? You're natural? Can you do that? Can you do the splits like Juji Mufu and lift a weight above your head? You're not stiff and immobile, are you? Oh, gee, I guess if you can't do the splits like Juji Mufu, you must be on steroids. This is just stupid. Being on steroids does not make you immobile or stiff. Where are you getting this? Again, some of the best athletes in the world, fitness influencers who are on tons of steroids, are more mobile and less stiff than you are. Now, the only thing that the Bioneer kind of got right here is that, if you take steroids, you may be at a higher risk of tendon ruptures, but that really just depends. Like, if you're taking a ton of steroids, your strength has increased massively over a short period of time, and you're also doing absolute maximal lifts, and the loads you're lifting are very high in terms of absolute load. Like, you're benching 500 pounds. You're going to be at higher risk of tendon ruptures. But what does that have to do with sports performance? Like, the reality is, you're not going to be seeing guys clean and jerking 246 kilograms over their head if they're not taking steroids. Steroids allowed Ilya Ilyin to break the world record. Just because you're taking steroids, that doesn't mean they reduce sports performance, because under certain circumstances, you may be at higher risk of tendon ruptures. Depending on how much steroids you're taking, what compounds you're taking, how quickly your strength is increasing, what types of loads you're lifting, how used to those loads your body, like whether or not you've adapted to those loads, that all plays a role. Like, again, Bioneer, if steroids don't help you lift more, then why don't you break a powerlifting or weightlifting world record, since, all these steroid users are just going to rupture their tendons anyway. It's not like they're going to get an increase in sports performance. It's ridiculous. Then prove us all wrong. Go into Olympic weightlifting. Break world records without taking steroids. Let's see it happen. Since apparently you're the genius who's figured out steroids don't improve sports performance. You should be able to walk right into Olympic lifting and smoke everybody and get world records. They make you stiff and immobile, right? Like, that alone should give you a huge advantage. It's just ridiculous.
It is possible to have big muscle and great mobility and movement. It is possible to be on steroids and have great mobility and movement, but it's much, much harder. And for some bodybuilders, it can become pretty ridiculous once they stop being able to do things like putting on their socks. I mean, is that really what you want? Is that more functional? Is that more awesome?
This guy has the reasoning skills of a toddler. He literally thinks if you just take one Anavar tablet, you suddenly become this big, huge, hulking, gorilla-like bodybuilder. Depending on how much steroids you're taking, what compounds, what training you're doing, you may or may not grow a significant amount of muscle. Again, we know Lance Armstrong was taking steroids throughout the entire duration of his cycling career. Does he look like this big, gigantic, gorilla-like bodybuilder who can barely tie his shoes? No, it's because he was taking different types of steroids at smaller doses that were required for optimizing performance in his sport, and he also wasn't doing weight training. He was primarily just doing cycling, which was his sport. Like, get a grip. Why do you think just taking steroids would turn you into a gorilla? If it was that easy, everybody taking them would be massive. But no, you can find people who are taking relatively high doses of steroids, like Cassidy Campbell, and you literally wouldn't be able to tell he was even on them. He just had poor genetics, probably didn't train and eat all that well, so he didn't grow all that much.
But all of these things come with caveats. So obviously, you're going to get a bigger bench press if you add steroids and all this. But this is one of the reasons I always want to emphasize that strength isn't everything when it comes to your performance. Because whilst you might have more brute power, especially because you've been training all that stuff for so long, it's not really going to translate necessarily to better movement. Someone who's much bigger and stronger doesn't throw a harder punch, a better punch, more powerful punch than a martial artist, because they're able to keep their body loose, they're able to reduce the effect of the antagonistic muscles, the ones pulling against you as you're pushing forwards. They're able to relax the whole body, they're able to generate power by twisting the hips, all this stuff. It's why Grant's punches look so much more powerful and quick than mine do. And this is true for all kinds of activities, whether you're sprinting, whether you're throwing, whether you're lifting something off the ground.
This is just so fucking stupid and delusional. I'm not going to waste too much time talking about this, but let me just ask you a simple question, Bioneer. If you had to fight in K1 or the UFC or whatever, which version of Alistair Overeem would you rather fight? Would you rather fight Alistair Overeem, before he took steroids when he was fighting at light heavyweight at 205 pounds? Or would you rather fight Alistair Overeem on steroids fighting at heavyweight at 265 pounds? Which version would you rather fight? Do you think you have a better chance against Alistair Overeem at heavyweight on steroids when he was called the Wrecking Machine? When he'd send people to the fucking hospital? Or would you rather fight a smaller, weaker, less competent fighter because he's not on gear? It honestly sounds to me like the Bioneer suffers from narcissism or something. Like, imagine telling your audience that, oh, you know all those fighters on steroids? Yeah, they're actually worse fighters. I could actually probably beat them because they're on steroids. Steroids are for losers. Alistair Overeem, 265 pounds, literally twice my size. I'd actually have an easier time fighting Alistair Overeem at 265 because, like, his muscles are too big and it kind of, like, makes him awkward and slow, and he can't really coordinate his movements as good as I can. Again, like, there's something, like, honestly, something fucking wrong with you if you think like this.
And something worth noting here is that if you look at militaries, most militaries don't use steroids. There have been some exceptions to that, but most do not. And you might be thinking, well, that's because they don't want to harm the health of their infantry. And I'm like, seriously, I don't think that most militaries are known for their morality when it comes to looking after their troops. If they could get benefits from using steroids, if they could make them faster, harder, stronger, better soldiers, you know, what happens to them after that be damned, then you can be sure they would. And they don't, because they don't want someone who's, you know, stiff and awkward and bulky and who's likely to keel over if they exert themselves. That's not an efficient, powerful warrior. And so steroids don't make you an efficient, powerful warrior.
So now he's making the claim the reason the military doesn't give soldiers steroids is because they've realized steroids do the opposite of what they're supposed to do, and they lower physical performance. Well, no, genius. The reason the military doesn't give out steroids to its soldiers is because they just wouldn't really help much. If you could make every soldier bench press 500 pounds and run as fast as Usain Bolt, how much good is that going to do them when they're given machine guns that can engage targets from 2,000 yards away? What's that going to do for them when we have Predator drones that can be flown by a pilot in a remote location and take out targets from across the fucking world? We have modern mechanized militaries. What is being so much bigger, stronger, faster really going to do for anybody? Nothing. The reason steroids aren't given to soldiers is because they're given machine guns, missiles, tanks, helicopters, jeeps to kill people with. So what if you can bench 500 pounds? You're not trying to crush somebody's skull open with your bare hands. Again, you're given machine guns and other technologies that do the work for you.
And possibly an even bigger reason that most militaries wouldn't want to give their troops steroids is that it does also impair their cognitive function, and cognitive function is really rather important when you're in a war zone. We know now from studies, for example, that steroid use actually lowers your IQ.
So the Bioneer isn't exactly wrong here. Steroids do lower your IQ, but if you're taking steroids for the interest of sports performance, well, you don't exactly have to be a genius to know you need to catch the ball and run it down to the other end of the field. So you don't need to be the brightest person to play any sport. And on the topic of intelligence, you realize there's a lot of contact sports that aren't exactly friendly on your IQ. So if you're going to say you shouldn't take steroids because they lower your IQ, then you should just blanketly say you shouldn't play contact sports like football, boxing, MMA, because those sports themselves, regardless of whether or not you're on steroids, will lower your IQ from brain damage.
Especially when you combine it with the fact that steroid use is going to make you more emotional. It creates roid rage, as we know, making you just angry and horny and furious all the time. But it's also not just roid rage. You also get depression from steroid use. Some people experience depression. You get brain fog, so you feel foggy, sad, angry.
So to be fair to Bioneer here, again, he did get some things right. Steroids can trigger depression and other mental health disorders. On the flip side, they can improve depression in cases like if you're taking steroids for TRT. But when he mentioned steroids cause aggression and anger and can make you super horny and rage-filled, those may be negative side effects in everyday life, but for sports performance, that is a benefit. If you're an MMA fighter or a boxer, do you want to enter the ring feeling happy and love-filled and peaceful, or do you want to feel like you're filled with rage and you want nothing more but to just kill somebody? So yeah, some athletes actually take steroids for the purpose of making them more angry and aggressive because it makes them better at their sport. Again, the claim here is that steroids reduce sports performance, but he's literally making an argument here for why they would improve sports performance.
But the thing is that steroids announce themselves. For all these reasons, it's usually pretty obvious who is and isn't using steroids. You're going to have that redder skin and the acne and the back knee and the thinning hair, and people are going to know you use steroids. You're going to have that posture, the development of certain muscles will be bigger, like the traps, because they have a higher proportion of androgen receptors. All of this means that someone looks at you and thinks they use steroids. They instantly lose a lot of respect for your results because, sure, you still worked hard. Again, this is something people always say online. Oh, you still have to work hard. They're still admirable. I mean, yeah, but they got better results than if they hadn't. So it's less impressive than if they hadn't used the steroids.
So I don't know what this really has to do with the thesis of his video. And again, he's contradicting himself. Oh, it's so obvious when people are on steroids. Not only are they bigger, faster, stronger, but they also have huge muscles and traps and acne and receding hairline. That sounds like an admission steroids work and they enhance sports performance. And also, there are tons of people who are probably on steroids that don't really look like it. Jeff Side, does he have red skin? Does he have a receding hairline? Does he have acne? He very likely is on steroids. He's an IFBB pro. I've gotten accusations that I've been on steroids quite a lot recently, especially since I benched 410 pounds. Should I stop lifting because people think I'm on steroids? Like, you may just be genetically gifted and work really hard, and people might start thinking you're on steroids because you look like you're on steroids. Should we be ashamed of ourselves for how we look? For no reason? I don't know what the hell he's really trying to say with this video. How about do whatever the fuck you want, and who cares what other people fucking think of you?
Again, why else would you do it other than to impress other people? You're putting your life at serious risk. You're impairing your performance, your brain function, your testosterone production, your sleep, your health, your relationships, your bank, your finances, all just to look impressive. And why? Again, it can only be insecurity. So when you look at someone who's taking steroids, you don't think, again, wow, what a specimen. You think, what a shame.
So again, this has nothing to do with the thesis of his video, and he's just moralizing about steroid use, which has nothing to do with whether or not it improves sports performance. And again, why would we assume that the only reason somebody would take steroids is because they're insecure? I'm sure a lot of people do steroids because they're insecure, but not everybody. Should we assume that the only reason you work out and lift weights and try to be healthy is because you're insecure and trying to impress other people? Oh, you lift weights and try to get big muscles in the gym? Oh, what a shame. I feel bad for you that you're so insecure that you feel like you need to work out to, have muscles to impress other people. Oh, you drive an expensive luxury car that goes really fast? Oh, what a shame. I feel bad that you feel so insecure that you need to impress other people. Oh, you went to school to become a doctor and you're rich now and you make a lot of money? Oh, well, what a shame. I feel really bad that you feel insecure that you have to do that to impress other people. Why would I assume any of these things? Like, some people might have different life goals, different interests, different beauty standards, different expectations for themselves. They want to live a different life than you do. Maybe, rather than being a judgmental dickhead who fucking lies constantly on his YouTube channel about steroids, you could just be honest and say, yeah, they do work, but Here's my reason for why I think you shouldn't take them, because they're really unhealthy and they probably won't benefit you. But I guess you're just really insecure and you feel like you have to put everyone down who take steroids because you're insecure about how weak and small you are. And that wraps up the Bioneer video, and I think it's pretty clear what his intentions were, and he didn't have the best intentions with making this video. Rather than providing accurate information on steroid use so that people could make an informed decision or have an informed opinion on them, he just decided to moralize and try to convince everybody that you're stupid for taking them and they don't even work even though the best athletes take them. And again, he's not doing this for altruistic reasons. If he was genuinely trying to convince young kids, teenagers, to stay away from steroids because they're going to harm your health and, it's not worth it to look like some of your favorite fitness influencers, probably not the best way to go about it by lying constantly, saying the stupidest shit imaginable, so when these kids see your video, they just immediately write you off because they think you're a fucking moron. But, maybe the Bioneer can clear this up for us. Are you just remarkably stupid? So stupid that you think Lance Armstrong would have been a better cyclist if he hadn't taken steroids? Or did you just lie about all of this? I'd love for him to answer this question, but as always, he's probably just going to act like I don't exist. But hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, keep making those vegan gains, and hopefully natural vegan gains.